Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight is Woke Wednesdays. We do this every single Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And tonight we are talking about education. And I'm very excited because we have three phenomenal educators. I've heard they're phenomenal. I can't attest to it. I don't know for a fact. But we have three phenomenal teachers on the show. Cannot wait to talk to them. So would y'all like to introduce yourselves real quick?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jasula. I am a proud educator. I've been in education for the past 6 years, and I can't wait to kind of give feedback and give insight on how I'm raising up the future.
Okay.
Right. Hi, everyone. I am Stephanie. I have been teaching for, this is my fifth year, so going into my 5th year, and I'm just really excited for like this show. Like I'm just excited for like the conversation, the dialogue, all that.
Let's do it.
Hi everyone, my name is Miss Patterson, as my students call me, but everybody else calls me V. This is my 5th year in education, and I'm just really excited to talk about education because I'm so passionate about it.
And I guess I should also say my credentials. Everybody out here
Okay.
talking. I'm a 3rd-year PhD student, Florida International University, pursuing a PhD in higher education. I teach at the university along with some awesome professors, so I have a little experience in the field too. Not so much K-12, more higher ed stuff. But yeah, so glad and just excited to have y'all on the show. Thank you so much. I know it was a hike for some of y'all, but thank you again for being here. So, y'all, if this is your first time tuning into Woke Wednesdays, please feel free to post comments, ask questions. If you disagree with something that we say, please let us know. Let us know why, and we'll try to address your feedback, your insight. So let's jump into it. Let's start with the big question. What is education? And y'all feel free to, anyone, whoever would like to take the question.
You said what is it?
What is education? How do you spell it? First, I'm kidding. No.
I'm going to say, you play.
PhD student.
So what is education? What does that mean to y'all? What is it? As you all are teachers. You mentioned that multiple years in the classroom. So what does education mean to y'all? And y'all feel free to let us know, how do y'all define education as well? And I'll read it off how y'all define it. So who would like to go?
I'll go first and we'll go down there. When I think of education, I literally think of just a sponge. I literally think of us. I always consider myself as a lifetime learner. The students that I teach, you're always learning through life. Education doesn't necessarily have to be in a classroom. If anything, if it's only in the classroom, we should have a concern about life. It should be everywhere. You learn everywhere. I think education is what builds you up, formulates you, evolves you, if you allow it. So education is more than books. I think a lot of it is more interactions, what you see, what you experience, what you're able to pick apart, question, and being willing to take in as well.
Yeah, I would say that education to me is really like investing in students' not only academic careers, but their talents and what they want to be as well. I think when educators go beyond the classroom, like you said, we're understanding that education is not just in the classroom, that's when we really start to build that education type of environment for a student. So investing for them to understand better, whether it be academics or understanding them as beings in society. So I think that's what it is to me.
Nelson Mandela said, and if I don't get the wording exactly correct, please don't try to tell
Nelson, don't get mad at us.
It's education is the most powerful weapon in which we can use to change the world, and I strongly believe that because, like these two ladies just said, it's not just about academics and getting, a certain score on a state test. I think it's truly what you teach these kids outside the classroom, in the classroom, about life skills that they will, remember when they are adults.
And Hot Natslik is saying teachers are superheroes. #salute.
Thank you.
Super Fu Wang Song is saying Paulo Freire. And in case you don't know who Paulo Freire is, he was a Brazilian, just educator, just activist, phenomenal. Just really changed what pedagogy meant in a critical way. Really just phenomenal. So y'all had like different definitions, right? Kind of
Mm-hmm.
bouncing off each other, but it seems that one of the themes of your definitions was a sense of, like a worldly kind of use.
Yes.
You want students to be able to also make decisions like in the world, not just in the classroom, but in the world.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But then I believe V mentioned something about state tests.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you begin to try to create in people, or try to educate when you are very much bounded by administration, bureaucracies, end of year tests? How do you educate?
I think that just goes into how you create a culture in your classroom, how you create things in your classroom. If all you are worried about is the way the student is sitting because you want them to pay attention so they can pass the state test, or when you go into your lesson plans and like all you see is like, okay, well, is this aligned to state testing and things like that, I think that's when you get caught up in like that bound part of it. But when you think about the culture that you create and understanding that everything is a learning experience. Yes, I'm teaching you something that you may not be interested in, but guess what? There's going to be times in your life as an adult, like you're going to have to do things you don't want to do. Like, how do you persevere through that? How do you show grit in this environment that you have right now? You know, so yeah, so I think that's how you cultivate it and not stick to that bureaucracy of state testing. So
I to definitely piggyback off that. In my classroom, I let my students know, I teach history. I'm a nerd when it comes to history. And so for me, I let my students know from the moment they step in, they're global citizens. I think it's extremely important. Like, what is that? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, look at the globe, girl. Come on. But I just let them know that they're global citizens, to let them know that what they're learning is beyond these doors and it will impact it. I think history, ironically, it doesn't have as much, I guess you could say, stake when it comes to education anymore. People don't see the importance, but this is why we're in the situation that we are right now, is people don't see the connections and patterns and habits, and they haven't changed from it, or they let you perpetuate. So I think with education, something that I do is I connect my students to what they're learning. I think keep creating an engaging classroom for my educators out there, for anyone really. Like, who wants to be in a workshop that's not engaging, or professional development that's not engaging, or a conference that's not engaging? Same concept as an adult that's for a child. I think creating avenues for them to be able to simplify the information that they're learning, but also to be able to connect to their real world. I think for them to see its importance, it's how I'm able to go beyond this number or this score that's supposed to be their identity. And I tell them that does not define you, number one. Number two, you can go beyond that by challenging the systems that be in creative ways.
But doesn't it define them in a way when they fail? When they fail the test, because then they end up thinking that they failed at life.
Well, that's the thing. It's all about how you provide that narrative, right? Because I'm like, what is the idea of failure, right? And I just literally talked about this with my debate students. I'm also a debate coach, right? Are you afraid to fail? What does that look like, and why are you failing? What about the root causes? So when students know that, listen, this is a hump, right? It's a roadblock on the way to where I need to get. Let's figure out how can I get past this roadblock, knowing, building you up. Go back to education. I am not a textbook. I am a child, a human being, a global citizen who has different components a part of me, who will thrive no matter what situation you put us in. So I think that's what I try to teach my students in the classroom, life skills that will connect to dealing with academia.
To build on the failing part, I always tell my kids to fail beautifully, because a lot of times, like, our kids from our communities, they fail at something and they feel like, oh my God, like you said, I failed at life. I can't do it. I'm not even gonna try anymore. But I show them, hey, I'm human too. There's times where Miss Patterson might even mess up. Like, I might be explaining and go, wait a minute, run that back right quick. That's not right. Let me fix what I just said. So I think even modeling for them what it means to not achieve something the first time, but you just have to keep showing that persistence and knowing that, okay, I'm gonna get this, maybe not right now, but I'm working towards it every single day, so I know I'm gonna achieve this in the long run.
The great Cornell West, first African American to graduate from Princeton with a PhD, always says that fail again, fail better. So kind of to your point. Now you said something interesting. You said kids from our communities, right? So in a way, you're saying something that kids from our community. Who are the kids from our community, and what do you mean by that?
Okay, so I'm mainly, obviously I'm talking about the kids in the inner city of Miami. So we're in Opa-locka. I've taught in Liberty City. Jackson is in Alapata. So a lot of times I feel like kids in the inner city that we teach, they don't have the same coping skills that kids would have in a suburban area. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying I noticed that the kids that I care for, something that might not be that big of a deal to me, and the way I view it, to them it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that you said this to me, or I can't believe that I did this wrong. Like, it seems to have such more of a impact on the way they feel. You know what I mean? Because some of them, they're not able to cope with emotions. Because a lot of times they're told, you know, like, this is how life is, and to deal with it, you just like get over it. Like, they don't really let things sink in. And even when it comes to things that are traumatic in their lives, like, they'll come to school and they'll tell me something that's crazy, like that'll have me on the floor crying, and then they're just like, yeah, you know, whatever. But then yet when it's something so small in the classroom, they'll lash out. Like, it's weird. Almost.
I think the reason why our students sometimes, and I can't speak for all, obviously, I think, like she said, our students deal with a plethora of things. Our students who are so young are living lives of 35, 40-year-olds at such a young age with some of the obstacles they deal with. What I think is happening is that we don't let our children be children. And because of what the situations they're in, I just read this really good article that kind of talked about how we don't let our students explore who they are, what they like. And when you don't allow them to explore who they are, like, literally ask my kids, so what do you like to do? Oh, you know, I don't know what my hobbies are. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I just like to sleep. The clear answer always in high school, my hobby is sleep. How sway? How do you sleep? Like, and that is their go-to answer, because they're not allowed to explore who they are, have opportunities. They barely have electives in all these inner city schools because they're trying to, you know, make sure that they get scores that they need to. So our students are not allowed to be children and explore. And remember, as you grow up, if you grow up in these environments, right, you're allowed to fail. Mommy or daddy will tell you, oh, okay, it's okay, get up on that bike again. You know what I'm saying? There's no one encouraging it and letting them see that failure is a natural way of life. It's like you have to live, and if you live, you make sure not to fail, because it's this idea of life or death. So then putting them on the spot in a classroom where they're alone and they don't have that quote-unquote support system or that culture that tells them you can't fail, they feel like they have no one to turn to. So in that moment, they are by themselves, and because of that, they shut down.
So let me play devil's advocate. I've heard from multiple teachers, right? And I've been in the schools. I volunteered a lot at alternative high schools, and sometimes you have people from City Year and AmeriCorps. Two things I'm very against.
I did City Year.
And I'm an alum for TFA.
Yeah, I'm definitely a
like I said, two things I'm very against.
Okay.
TFA and City Year, I despise them. But we can go into that later. But I hear from them. I hear from a lot of other teachers. We know that 84% of K-12 teachers are white women. And I hear from a lot of these teachers, and a lot of research also talks about these same things, where they see these kids, our children, right? We're talking about poor Black, Hispanic kids for the most part, as these badass kids, right? Like, what the fuck are they doing? And you hear all this type of language, especially in teachers' lounges.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, why can't they get their shit together? And they're talking about like a child.
Yep.
So how do y'all navigate this type of language in these type of environments in the midst of prejudicial language, classist language, racist language? How do y'all navigate all this?
You have to address it right then and there. So I know even last year, well, I'm not gonna say last year, there was once upon a time in my education career that a white teacher, she felt the need to constantly make a comment about the girls and their hair. And the way she would touch it, like, I just don't understand, like, why does it look like that? Why does it do that? And I said, hey, you do realize that when you're doing that, you're breaking them down, because they just made a comment to you about your straight white hair and how beautiful it is, and then when you respond to them, it's, yeah, I don't understand how your hair is. So I know for me, I had to constantly address it, because if I don't, I felt you're gonna do it to another student, and I don't know how many kids you're affecting that look like me, and I don't want them feeling like, you know, something about them is wrong, they are a defect, like they're not pretty because they don't have the features that you have.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that really does bother me about some white educators that do come off that way. Because it's like, you don't realize the power you have, because when they watch mainstream media, they see light-skinned white women. So to have you make these comments to them, they take it as fact. They might even take it more as fact than, you know, me saying it, because you're in the mainstream when it comes to what they see on TV.
Yeah.
So I know for me personally, like, I address it right then and there, and it might come off very raw, but I don't care, because you don't know how that kid took it. That might stick with them years down the road.
Yeah. And I think that's also important that, like you said, you address it right then and there. But you also like let them know, like, you're not here to be white savior. You're not here to save our children. You're here to educate our children. And like we said, from before, our definitions of education and what that sounds like, what that looks like, and especially in our communities, because like it is so. I mean, like, not you gotta be sensitive, but you just have to understand like your role. Like,
to be culturally.
Yeah, you have to be culturally knowledgeable. You have to understand like your role as far as like, I'm this educator. Yes, I don't look like you. Yes, I may not understand the things that you go through, but help me just to understand you as a child, like a whole child, like holistically, not just your situation that you go through, or why can't these kids, because I that was a school that I had came from at my previous school, and I loved my previous school, but a lot of the educators were white women. A lot of the educators did talk about the students, and I was teaching kindergarten and first grade. Like they're talking about 5-6-year-olds in that manner, and it's like, but then you come to a student and then you don't understand why they don't respect you. It's because they know you don't love them.
Right.
They know that you look down on them.
Like,
they get that. They can see right through it. Just like they always say, drunk people and little kids tell you the truth always.
Listen.
So because they know. So
I definitely I think it's interesting. I think were you gonna say something, Harrison?
Oh, no. Oh, real quick, I just want to read a comment. Someone said, "Good evening, everyone," and I really want to read this one. One of my mentees back home saying, "Y'all are just so inspiring." So
thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I always tell people, how did you get an education? I was like, Jesus did it, because like my degrees don't have nothing to do with education. I never thought I liked children, and then apparently I did. Like, it happened. I saw, and I think I used to volunteer a lot of up in Tallahassee. I went to Florida State, and so I used to volunteer a lot, and I saw these kids in these rural areas. People always talk about the inner city, but their rural areas struggle so much, even sometimes more than inner cities places. And I would see these kids, and I would see educators who look like us, who would tear down these kids more than anything. So my whole thing is, it's not even, and of course I know it's important that we students are taught by individuals who look like them, because it's empowering. I have several students who talk about how I've empowered them because I'm a black woman who does not consider stereotypes or ideas or judgments. I'm who I am through and through, and that inspires them. But also, I think it's how you approach students. I'll never forget my first year down here. I saw someone tell a student who jokes around, he could be labeled as bad, blah blah blah. He was like, I always remind my students, hey, remember, you're gonna get to college, you're gonna do something. And she said in front of the whole class to the student, such and such is not going to college. Blah blah blah. Laughed it off. All the kids were laughing at him. I was like, how dare you? I was like, no. I was like, don't you say that in my classroom. I was like, don't you ever in your life.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I took him aside later on. I was like, bro, you're going to meet people just like that, who look like you, who don't look like you, who will tell you that you ain't going to be nothing.
Right.
And you let them know off rip. Thank you for what you got to say. Write me a letter. I'll rip it, burn it, throw it in the trash. And you better watch me grow and rise and be who I need to be. So I think for me and the students, and my students at my school in particular, all the kids who like me, are the kids who are considered, the bad, whatever, in quotations or whatever. Why? Because you have to know how to connect with them. You know what I'm saying? You have to know how to connect with the students. You have to meet them where they're at. If you don't do that, you're gonna get that. And so I think it's hard for me to see educators who have that power in the classroom tear a child down at such a young age, as young as third kindergarten, come and believe I ain't gonna be nothing. That's crazy to me. How dare you?
Yeah.
Man, I yes to all of that. My roommate and I actually talk about all the time. That Zora Neale Hurston, not everyone that's my skinfolk is my kinfolk. We do talk about it. Just because you look like me don't mean you're gonna rock with me either, right?
Right.
So, yeah. Real quick, let me read. We have a really interesting question, and I think it kind of alludes to what you're saying. What's the difference of education between inner city schools and suburban schools?
Everything.
Where do we begin?
Where do we start?
Resources.
Resources. I definitely think because what happens, people don't realize how resources make the world go round in education.
Mm-hmm.
When there's not enough resources, the breakdown happens everywhere, and it affects everyone, in particular teachers and students, of course, most importantly. So I think we don't have the resources. Of course, when you look at it, education impacts the community, or the community impacts the type of education in the school. So a lot of these parents are working 2-3 jobs, have these type of lifestyles that are not conducive. They're not supporting. It's just so much. Like, education is you could say the child of everything that goes wrong or right in a community, and people don't realize that. So that, I think that'll be the biggest thing to say.
Real quick, just to Chelsea saying, "Go off, sis." Say it louder for the people in the back. And one thing that's interesting too, a lot of people don't know, but usually the way K through 12 schools are funded are through property taxes.
Yep, they are.
So obviously, the poorer the community, the lower the taxes, so the less resources schools have, and obviously, the more well off the community, the more affluent they are, the higher the resources are, right? Now we're getting a question here. I want to hear your thoughts on how you guys would like to see improvements on inner city schools and their socioeconomic and racial divides.
Let's see. Well, gentrification plays a part. Like, you can stop doing that to the communities, because the kids, they see that divide.
So, like, for example, I used to teach in Liberty City, and my kids live right across the street from the school, so they're right in the beans. And I remember
In the where?
We call it the beans.
In the frijoles? The beans?
Thank you.
See, he from South Miami. That's why he don't know. So for those of y'all that from Miami, when you're talking about the beans, it's a housing project. It's called the Pork and Beans, but we just say the beans.
And all in the back, or 14th Cortez, they tore it down. So a lot of my kids were getting vouchers. Like, I gotta move to either Tallahassee, what is it called, Homestead, or Georgia. And they're like,
Georgia.
And like, why do I gotta move? And it's just heart-wrenching to me, because I would just be like, you know, that's just the way things are. And the kids, like, no, like, they have an idea, but okay, like, something's happening in my community, and it's not going to impact me in a positive way. You know what I mean? Because then when they come back 6 months to a year later, they see the changes. Like, the second a kid or anybody will see like a Starbucks, Whole Foods,
Panera,
Panera,
Target,
you already know
Chipotle.
Gentrification is happening.
Right.
So I think that's one thing. Like, if you're gonna come,
real quick, what is gentrification? What is gentrification? Just for
so the way I identify it pretty much is when you come to a community and you pretty much take it from them. Like, you put all of these resources in the community, but it's not meant for the original community. It's meant for outsiders to come and take over.
The interesting
and
thing
then you
is,
make like, you know, taxes, you make the cost of living so much higher, so they're like, well, damn, now I really can't live here
Because they can't afford it.
because they can't afford it.
So it's really interesting if you were to Google it, because Google the definition for gentrification. It says
Oh, it's gonna be something different.
it's a very
interesting.
it's a very generic type of definition where it says it improves the infrastructure of the community.
No, it don't.
But technically speaking,
Because there can be two ways.
technically, right? Gentrification, improving the plumbing of our communities, the roofing of our communities, you know, getting rid of just like trash in our communities. This is an important thing. This is a good thing. And my frat brother and I, roommate, we were talking about this, about how the danger of it when people aren't involved in it. All right?
Of course.
Talking about how this also attracts white people, and white people come into our communities. Property taxes, the cost of living actually goes up. Right? When black people actually move into communities, stuff
goes down.
So you're absolutely right. It actually ends up displacing people. People can't afford to live where they've lived for decades.
And then I think, especially when you see it in Miami, like, for example, when I grew up here, there was no Wynwood. That was all Overtown. So now when you go to that area called Wynwood, and it's like this hippie area with all this
all
graffiti,
the art, right?
and it's like, it's crazy because growing up, that was like the hood. It was like,
it was like Overtown.
But then someone said, "Ooh, wait, let's make this artsy." But now if you look, there are apartments in Overtown, and I look like, oh, that's kind of cute. Let me see what it costs. $1,400 to live in Overtown, like who can still afford that if you originally are from this area? So you didn't make this for people that live here.
Well,
you made it for someone else to come in and kick them out. And that's why when I hear gentrification, I'm like, I hate to be pessimistic, but it's hard for me to see the positive, because when I think about Miami, I'm like, who has it helped?
Well, the thing is, it's interesting because I had one of my I taught geography, right? Cultural geography.
What didn't you teach?
I'm like, dang, what did we do? I'm like 3 different things.
Damn. And I had my students do a take because my students live where gentrification has happened and is known for, and so they have to take pictures of their area and follow and how they find evidence that gentrification was occurring or it had already occurred. And a lot of students and look up some history on it. And we had a debate in our class. We had a Socratic seminar, and they were able to talk about exactly.
I love Socratic seminars.
And our students were able to look and see. So a lot of our students were on the fence on is gentrification good or bad, right? Because a lot of it, on the flip side, one could say, well, it brings arts to communities that's never been seen, right? It brings, right, all these type of opportunities, right? But again, who are you displacing? So gentrification is a direct result, in Miami in particular, of global warming, right? Even though people don't think it exists.
Talk about it.
And what it does is that, and there's a lot of people who are not involved. Though I always hate what happens in our communities, right? It's a brain drain that happens. We take the most talented, we ship them out to these PWIs or Ivy League schools, and we don't teach them to come back to help their community. Why are we not coming back and helping out? Why? So you're leaving this opportunity or this loophole for these investors to come in and take ours. So that's exactly what happened. So yes, we can say, yeah, they're coming up, but they're doing a strategic move that we could have done if we would have came back and helped, instead of now going in and now I've graduated from such college and I'm living in the suburbs, and now I look down on the communities I've come from, which occurs a lot in our communities, and the cycle of education as well.
Very true. No, I was definitely agreeing with all that she was saying. Yes.
But so the question originally too was about seeing improvements in the inner cities and their socioeconomic and racial divides. It's very interesting. So we refer to schools as like, oh, that's a black school.
Right.
This is a Hispanic school. That's a white school.
Yeah,
so there's a reason why these schools are racially this way, and we can trace it back to post World War II, redlining, the idea that people of color, specifically Black and Hispanic people, were not allowed to move into the suburbs. That's when the suburbs was created post World War II. Right, that's why it's called the inner city, because these people, colored people, could only live in the inside part of the city. White people could live on the outside of it. That's how you get the suburbs. So this is legislation and law policy that was put into place to keep people from moving to the suburbs. Even Black veterans that came back from World War II couldn't even get the GI Bill in the way that white people were able to get these housing loans, which were at a very, very low rate, very low cost, which was amazing for white people. This was a good thing, but not everyone was legally allowed to have this. So that's really how you end up having these racially segregated schools. And also post-slavery, right? You already had schools that were black only because they couldn't go to school with white kids, right? So this stuff runs deep. So my point is there are histories and reasons as to why this stuff even exists. So we have a lot of people getting on right now. If you are new to Woke Wednesdays, we do this every single Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tonight we're talking about what is education, the role of education. Clearly we're talking about issues that affect students in education. And I want to ask a question that one of my mentees that the lovely Jasula put me in contact with, Norman, my dog. He told me, he's asking, what was your biggest surprise, positive or negative, as student teachers? Or maybe even as beginning teachers, when you first started as a teacher. What were some of your biggest surprises, whether good or bad?
I think one of my biggest surprises was the lack of empathy from educators when I first got in, because like she had said, this was Jesus' doing, her being an educator, because
you know what? I got a cousin. I got like 18 cousins.
Because she doesn't have a background in education, and neither do I. Like, I was a psych major and a sociology minor, and I had no idea I wanted to teach. But I knew that whenever I worked with children, it never felt like work. It felt like I was doing something positive. I was doing something progressive. Purposeful, basically. And so when I got into education, I'm like so optimistic, especially as a first-year teacher. I think all first-year teachers go into it like, oh, I'm so optimistic. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to change a life. Even if I touch one kid, it's going to make the difference. You know what I'm saying? And then you come in and your colleagues, sitting next to you, they don't feel any kind of way way you feel, they're just like, man, I'm ready for it to be 2 o'clock, okay? Like, or man, I'm just here, like, I got whatever I have, like, not trying to cultivate these students with their interests outside of school, not trying to create a classroom that is going to build culture to create them as beings of society. Like, they're literally just there, like, I'm gonna read from this book, I'm gonna read out this book that they told me I need to do, but guess what, I'm still gonna get paid. Or when they tell children, like, it don't matter what you do, I'm still gonna get paid. Hey, I don't care if you sit back there all day, I'm still gonna get paid. Like, or I can sit here and you guys do whatever you want, I'm still gonna get paid. And it's just like, I think that was my biggest surprise going in, because I think the children, they do want to learn. I think the children, they do want to be invested, especially like children in the inner cities, schools, children at Black and brown communities. They feel like, I think outsiders feel like they don't care about education, they don't care to learn. But no, but you put people in there that don't care about them, so their output is, I don't care about school because this person in front of me that's teaching me for 8 hours a day doesn't give a rat's ass about me, period.
Oh, we don't cuss on the show. So.
Oh, really?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Cussing.
Right.
To build on what Stephanie said, that was shocking to me. That even from a leadership perspective, this was in my first school, that they really just don't care about the kids. And I even got in trouble for doing too much with my kids, like caring about them too much, like trying to make sure that the curriculum was relevant to who they are. And in teaching, we call it culturally responsive teaching. And I wanted to make sure I was doing it in my classroom. And she got mad at me and pretty much said, no, stick to the curriculum because they have an FSA test. And I said, okay, but they're disengaged because the topics that you have them reading about, the people, where they're from, they can't relate to it. So what's wrong with me making it relatable? And that was a problem. And then it dawned me, I'm like, you really don't care about these kids. You care about that bonus. You care about them. You care about those scores.
Grades.
And that was so disheartening to me because as someone that didn't have an education background and thinking the same thing, like I'm going to change the world, and then meaning not the pose, honey.
I see you, Wonder Woman.
And thinking that I was going to change the world, and then seeing that even from a leadership perspective, like you don't feel this way, and it's like, then why the hell are you in education?
So can I ask you, so when teachers have been in the game for like sometimes decades, and they've seen so many horrible things, do we sometimes, like, is it sometimes understandable that they're this cynical about like where they work and everything? It's kind of just a question.
I mean, I feel like
what you think?
we probably all seen it. I mean, I'll let everybody speak for themselves, but I think if you're at that point where your cynical ways are like just too much on a child, then you need to tell yourself, you know, maybe this is not for me anymore.
Exactly.
I need to step down and say, I've done my time. Now let me go find something else to do.
Yeah.
Because all that pessimism and that negative energy that you're giving to that child, you have no idea what it's doing to them. You have no idea how it's making them feel. And how that might stick with them, you know, until they become adults. So it's like, if that's how you feel about education, please step down. Do us a favor.
So in a way, you're saying, real quick, you're saying that this is not about the teacher. This is about the students.
Not
in a way, right? Because it's like, yo, like you gotta figure some shit out, so you gotta balance.
In that realm,
I mean, in that realm,
yes.
No, I mean, in that realm, when your energy is being passed on to them and it's nothing but negative energy, then yes. But I'm not saying we don't matter, because if anything, teachers, we forget that we matter. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because we're so concerned about our kids.
All teachers matter.
We do. Well, yeah. But we do matter. But I just think once you get to that point where you are just clearly and obnoxiously unhappy, and you have to let it be known by just, you know, having this ego with your kids, like, then just step to the side, sis. Like, stop doing it.
Because it is about the children, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I matter as an adult. So me as an adult, I have to understand my work-life balance. I have to understand, like, hey, I need to self-care and I need to do X, Y, and Z. But at the end of the day, your job is for the kids.
Yeah.
Your job, what you are doing, is to create functional human beings in society later on in life. That is your partnership with that child's parent for that 10 months that you are in school.
That is your commitment.
That is your commitment that you did. So I don't see how, like, if, like V was saying, if you are feeling that way, go ahead and step down, because now at this point, whatever bad experiences you have had throughout those decades, now you're placing that judgment on completely new students students that have no idea what you had went through. So it is about the
Yeah, it is.
I think when it comes to teaching, I'll honestly say the first thing that came to mind was I was like, yo, why are these kids cursing like in front of adults? Like, that's literally what I will never forget. I will never forget that. I had just moved back to my. I was like, what's happening right now? It was just like it was a culture shock for me because I don't remember all that.
Funny.
That's exactly popped in. I was like, why are these kids cursing? I was like, what's going on? And so I had to have a no cursing policy and stuff like that. But then I think something else that came to mind is work-life balance. I think we don't talk about that, and I always tell first-year teachers like, I'm just surviving. I'm making it through. And it's a lot. I think teachers do matter. It's because I think what happens is if you don't get yourself together and you don't have a perfect balance, it's gonna fall and spill over all over the kids. And if you know, I've seen and heard some crazy stories about some of my fellow educators. But I think that, but it's very obvious too. And kids know who's not gonna be for me and who is for me. And so I think if you're willing to put in the effort, then it's there. But the goal is to evolve as an educator. You know what I'm saying? And try to persevere no matter what type of environment, unfortunately, that some schools are in. You gotta strive, and you gotta find that. I will definitely say, and for me in my experience over the years, I've definitely found a lot of mentors and who've been so passionate about education, who've seen the bad, and the ugly, but who found creative ways to help our students and given me so many good ideas and had me reflect and evaluate on how I could be better, what I was doing. You know what I'm saying? Because I always tell my students, if you're not getting something or something's going haywire, it's my fault. I need to go check and see what's good on my part before I try to go and find a way to blame you as a student.
Definitely.
So we have a lot of interesting questions that have been asked, and I would like to get to them all, but we have about just 20 minutes left. So, but one question that really stood out to me was, as an educator, how do you deal with the lack of participation from parents? What can parents do aside from helping? What can parents do aside from helping with homework, if they can even do that?
I think it's hard. I can speak for me, but my whole thing is I already know what it is. When I come in there, am I going to of course I'm going to reach out to the parents, but my thing is I know a lot of our students don't got parents, or that's not their guardian, or their parents had them young, and that's what we're seeing, and I can only speak for my community, where there's a lot of either parents, and I teach at a very heavily immigrant community, a lot of, so I have a lot of students who are undocumented, right? That's a big reality. So a lot of these parents honestly don't know. Even parents who were born here in America don't know what to do. So are you willing to partner with the parent? Now you're gonna meet some very interesting parents, but you know what I'm saying, who don't care, who wants you to be their babysitter, you know what I'm saying? But I think it's navigating. Sometimes you're gonna be the parent for the child. You have to also accept that role if you want to, in some essence. But I think that in those ways, you have to figure out how to reach out to them. If you can't reach out to them, figuring out creative ways to make sure that child still succeeds. At the end of the day, it's about the kid. So I think that sometimes we have to be mindful. This parent didn't come in. Well, this parent didn't know, so they're lashing out because they don't know and they don't want to say they know. Also, this parent works 3 jobs. This parent doesn't actually know English. So we have to be realistic, and the expectations we want for these students is they're very interesting environments that require a lot of struggle and a lot of might, and they're in really tight situations.
I just want to add on that. I think building that bond with the parent really sets you aside from being just a teacher and an educator, because I know anytime it was hard for me to communicate with the parent, I would have to go outside my classroom. So I might have to drive to your house. I might have to pop at your son's football game, because this needs to work. Like, it's not just going to be me and your kid. Like, it needs to be the 3 of us on the same page. So this student knows, okay, like, they're not playing around. Like, they're all on me right now because they want to see me excel. So I think it's important to know that connection might not just happen by you sending an email or doing like a class dojo message. Like, no, you might actually have to get in your car and meet up with the parent. You might have to eat dinner with them and have a conversation. You might have to educate the parent on things they don't know. Like, there's times where I had to take out my laptop and say, you want thesis for your kids? Here, let's do this application now online. Like, you're gonna have to do that. If you are if you are truly an educator, you want to educate anybody.
Amen.
You know what I'm saying? Right. So to me, that really sets you aside. Are you a teacher or are you an educator? That's why I say I'm an educator.
You know, it's interesting when you break down the term, the word educator, the prefix and the suffix and all that stuff. What it means at its root, it means to lead someone out of ignorance. Ignorance does not mean stupidity.
Yeah.
If you were to look it up, that as well, ignorance just means a lack of knowledge.
Right.
All right. So I think that's beautiful, right? And it shows compassion, it shows empathy, and I think it shows maybe a morality around what you believe education to be,
Right.
which is to not just lead the students out of a type of lack of knowledge,
The
but also
parents,
the parents,
the community,
because
yeah.
especially in these communities,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
When a lot of the parents are also poor.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I always try to let it be known in the beginning of the year, throughout the year, even towards the end of the year. This is a triangle. This is a three-way connection, and the tip,
Geometry.
and you know the
Geometry.
Pyramid.
You would.
Okay, so
You would.
she's
This
talking
is
pyramid. Oh Lord.
You look at
You
this.
know, so since we're doing math terms, and the vertex at the top is the child, okay?
Not the
And
vortex.
the right is the child. While I have expectations that you can expect from me as a teacher, and I have expectations from you as a parent. I think, of course, it's a lot easier in elementary school because the children are so young. The parents are, they're a little bit more involved and amped up about, their kid and their education and things like that, where I can only imagine, like, how much that dilutes by the time they get to, like, high school.
Even middle school.
And even middle school, right? So, but just really setting expectations. I feel like when educators, they just talk to parents and they don't talk to parents, or they just say, oh, here, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing, this is my expectations of your child, and blah, 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 me, this is what I expect. It's just like, of course, that parent starts to then lose interest in whatever you're talking about, because you don't even care, like V was saying, to involve them in, like, okay, well, let me educate you, since you don't know maybe where to find these resources, or how to understand this lesson, or how to whatever the case may be. So I think, like, we as educators, if we tell parents, like, okay, this is what I expect from you as a parent, and this is what I expect from your child, and for them to know that this is a collaboration throughout these 10 months that we're going to be together for your child to grow.
Yeah, I always tell my parents, this is a partnership.
Yep.
Like, we're in this together.
Yep.
And so I think I've worked in it. I've worked for nonprofits and schools and stuff like that, where you have to let parents know, and you have to teach them, how to be a partner in this, and as much as possible. So I think that's extremely important. I think when you use that language, people, I think sometimes you don't want to always call a parent, hey, your child doing X, Y, and Z. You don't always want to be negative. You also want to let the parent know, yo, your kid just rocked that. They just earned this. You know what I'm saying? Or they just really, for a whole week straight, didn't do this. And so you also inspire the child and let them know that, hey, she's also going to tell my mom, my dad, my grandma, whoever, that I'm also improving, that there's ways for me to improve, and that, there is a chance for me too, because a lot of students it's instilled in their mind that they're always going to be inferior in whatever they do. And so I think it's all about building character and letting them, the parent, also know that their child is capable, because you also meet parents that don't believe that their child is capable, which is also very heartbreaking in itself. So I think that you also have to also remind that parent, hey, you have a gift right here. So how do you want to build it up?
It's interesting too, because so next week, you're just not tuning in. We do this every single Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So now we're talking about education. Please feel free to ask questions and post comments. Next week we're talking about poverty, and how poverty is a systemic form of oppression. It is not. Poverty is not a choice. People don't choose to be poor. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. So we're going to be talking about that next week. The reason I'm bringing it up now is because when we talk about, and it seems like we've been focusing a little bit about inner city communities and stuff, a lot of these parents, right, they might be single parents, raising a couple of children. My mom raised 3 children, single mom, cleaning houses, right, doesn't speak English. This is a very real thing. And how do you, these parents, it is a privilege to even be involved in your child's life.
It is.
To be on a PTA, what is that, parent
teacher,
what is
association.
That's a privilege. There was a movie that came out, it was Bad Moms or something. People that were on a PTA, and I don't know who is on a PTA. What kind of a person is on a PTA?
And those aren't even common.
Like,
we don't even really have.
I can't even spell.
We don't
PTA.
have those.
Yeah. So I want to get to everyone's question, because we're running out of time. Dream Sin Honey is asking, do you think it helps or hurts? I'm referring to inter-districting busing students out of their communities to go to other communities. Do you think that hurts them? Do you think it's a good thing?
I don't think it's a bad. Sorry, because we're passionate about this, because we actually teach in a school where we do bus our kids. And when I first got there last year, it was different for me. I'm like, oh, so we're gonna bus kids, we're gonna take them out of their community, bring them here. But then I realized, like, you know what? We're still servicing the same kids. You know what I mean? And
why should we limit a child just because
Who's
their
the we?
parent?
Like, who's the we and who are the kids? Like, can you break down a little bit what busing means? I don't know if everyone understands.
So busing, like taking them out of their community, go to a different school, another
So
community.
they live here,
right?
And for some reason they can't go to school in their community,
Right.
So
Well, they don't have the
what,
resources, or the parent doesn't want to, or they have a voucher, or
right.
those situations.
That's how I'm taking. Is that how y'all take it?
Yeah, no, that's
okay,
how
making
it's
sure.
So this is very much like an affluent parent type of choice.
Not in that situation. Yeah. So a lot of parents. I was one of those students who I went to a magnet high school.
Oh.
So I went to school. So I went to school that had a magnet. So I was bused, and then they cut busing and funding for us, and so then I had to literally take the actual bus. Public translate, but that's what it is. You're giving the students the opportunity. I see both sides to it.
Yeah.
You're taking the students and they're letting them go to a good school. The argument that a lot of people are making is that why can't you just make the school in that community the best for them so they don't have to leave? Yeah. But then what V I think is going to allude to is that's an opportunity for them to have a chance.
Exactly. My thing is like, why limit them? So not to say that the schools in their community are bad,
But if they want to go to this school and do something different, who are we to say no? Life is about choice, and that's the problem already with our kids. They don't have a choice
because they don't. And
right,
so
but
this is interesting.
But if they have a choice to go to a different
why
school,
don't they have a choice?
I think we romanticize the idea of choices. Yes, in a perfect world, I would hope that every single child has a choice to live the best life that they ever can. Right? But what happens? So think of what kind of a child too. So we talk about busing, but some parents actually drive their kids right to the school. Right? So that's another thing. Right? I used to take the bus as a kid. That you gotta wake up hella early. At least in North Carolina, we had to be out there at 6:30 in the morning. And when it's cold outside, it's cold outside. At 6:30 in the morning. And I went to school at the school that I had to go to, like the one I was, I guess,
community school.
Right? Now imagine I had kids working at an alternative high school, MacArthur South, down in Homestead. Kids coming from Hialeah, kids coming from Liberty City. These kids are up at 4 in the morning.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of research that tells us that if you have a rich kids and they have horrible teachers, and then you have poor kids and have really good teachers, the rich kids actually end up doing better, despite how horrible the teachers are, than the poor kids who have really good teachers, because they have resources that our children just don't have. So you wake up at 4 in the morning to start school at 8 in the morning. Yo, like by 12, you're tired. And the food they give our kids, that's a whole nother WokeWednesdays. It's shitty, right? Like
disgusting.
Like it's jail food.
But again, so that's their parent right there trying to use whatever choice they have to give their kid what they believe is the best education. And I think I'm biased too, because I know I wasn't bused. My mom drove my sister and I. We went to school in Bay Harbor for like 2 years. We just used to fake a dress because she wanted us to go to white Jewish school. But once they found out, we had to go back to North Miami.
Right.
And my mom, she was kind of like, dang, because she didn't want us going there. She wanted us to go to this white Jewish school because the resources and the quality of education.
Yeah. Now, is it true? I don't know. Is this a myth or that they usually send like beginning teachers and to like the worst?
I can't speak on
schools?
that.
Is that because I've heard that often? I'm not.
I think it depends on the shade.
With
some organizations. So I'm gonna sip on this water though. This is spring from Publix.
I can't spring from Publix. That's what you're referring to. I cannot. I think what you're referring to, I think it doesn't. The idea of worst teachers, regardless, you're unprepared. Regardless of what route you take. If you go through, let's say, TFA or whatever, you are truly, sometimes when you go into these schools, you are not prepared. Even the teachers who said, yo, I went to school for this, I teach, you're unprepared. There's a lot of stuff that they don't teach, that you're not prepared for as a teacher on top, and then you add the layer of, now I'm in a school where these students need me more than ever, or I have to figure things out. I don't have a mentor teacher, or my mentor teacher is toxic and I don't know how to get information from her. I have to know how to do work balance. It's a lot. You have to prepare to be a lot. So when people are like, oh my God, well, you guys get summers off. Do you know we earned that times 10? Right. And so, like, there's a lot that, don't get mad. And so, but there's a lot that goes into teaching.
Yeah,
and
so much.
Teachers who are put into these cycles where they're first year and they're unprepared, I think it's horrible. And you're setting that teacher up for failure. That's why you have a high turnover rate.
So real quickly, we have less than 10 minutes left, and I want to just kind of read and ask some real quick questions. Chelsea's saying absolutely a fact. I went to magnet school and was up at 4:30 in the morning to catch a bus by 6.
Yeah.
We have a person here by the name of MD Lewis asking, how do you all manage the stress of teaching, navigating institutional politics, and the unrealistic academic expectations of the state without losing hope or burning out? Burning the fuck out.
What's this called? Wine?
Yeah, just like I was saying.
Alcoholism seems to be one that people quote. Okay, not alcoholism.
Just like I think what I was talking about earlier, that work-life balance, like that work-life balance, and having that work-life balance, and also understanding what you need. The type of environment you need to create for your students. So like you said earlier when you were talking about failure and how students feel like, okay, well, if I fail, then the whole world is gone and things like that. But I think if you create that type of environment where they understand, like, it's not all about that state test. It's not all about this. It's not all about that. I think that then lessens the load on the burden that you carry. Like, yes, it's a big load, but I know that it's for something greater than this state tests and things like that. And then, like I said, that work-life balance, like, it's really hard to get in those first couple of years. This is my 5th year, and I think last year was when I really started to, like, get to my work-life balance for real. So it took me like 4 years to do it. So
getting into policy, I think the people who are making the decisions, a lot of them, one, never been in education. Number two, they never been to the school like our kids are going to. So how you make decisions?
Not
and I think
alcoholism.
Right, I think we need to get into right, I really think that you need to get into policy. So I think it's finding ways where you impact policy. If you're not gonna get into policy, you want to get into that messy cycle, then you need to find a way to impact. I think it goes beyond that, right? So regardless if you leave teaching or not, I think it's how do I impact those students, right? On in the big picture, right? Because again, why do we, and how it goes back to basic civics. Like, why do we not know who's running for superintendent? Why do we not know who's on our school boards? And why are we not aware of this? Why do we not know their history? Why do we not know their record of voting? What's happening? So why the governor election, cough cough, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot that goes into that, right? So, right? So I think there's a lot. So we're not also being involved in the political sense, which is why, unfortunately, a lot of our communities are suffering because they don't have representation from our communities, making sure that they're fighting for us. So you need to know what the heck is going on in education. You need to know, because I'm a debate coach. Last year, our debate topic was education. I was like, yo, this is like, I'm in a hate. I feel like I'm in a maze. Right. This hurts my head. Yeah. Like, there's so much to it, and that's why people leave from it. Yeah. Or they just leave it for the rich people who've been studying this for his whole life. We need to get into policy. We need to ask the right questions at all levels, not just parents, as educators. And we need to vote for the people who are going to put money and food and resources back into our communities.
Vote Jasula Charles 2020. Vote Jasula Charles 2020 with the hashtag.
Another thing, just really
sorry. I'm so sorry.
I can't.
No.
Oh.
We only have less than 5 minutes.
It was gonna be a simple way to try to deal with the load, the burden.
I see what you tried to do there. How you tried to
No, I can't talk about it though. I'm gonna let you talk.
Yeah. So we have to end the show. I'm sorry, we have to. The show's only an hour long, so we have less than 5 minutes left. But if you had to tell the people something, students watching, teachers, parents, fellow educators, if you had to leave them with something tonight, we talked about a lot tonight. Role of education, what is education, the bullshit that people deal with in education, both students and teachers and parents. What would you kind of leave people with? Who would like to go first? Go first.
It's a loaded question.
It is. We asked some great questions here on WokeWednesdays. Yeah. So now you have 4 minutes.
I think you should say your comment.
You can end with your comment if you want. Go ahead.
No, because it's off topic now. No, we gotta stay. Teacher, we gotta stay on topic.
Oh Lord. So thank you very much for tuning in tonight. I appreciate y'all.
No.
Yeah.
What would we leave everyone with?
I would say.
I think education. I'm just gonna start.
Yeah.
Okay.
See where it goes.
Because I feel like people might watch and think, oh my God, there's so much negative that comes along with education. Like there's so many things that have a negative connotation. Education can be this beautiful, empowering, uplifting thing, but it all depends on what you do when you step foot in that classroom. Because yes, there are the powers that be that are ahead of you, but they don't control what goes on in the four corners of your classroom. So I think just knowing that you do have that power and what comes out of your mouth really does dictate how your day, how your year is gonna go. So, yeah, it doesn't have to be this ugly, scary thing at all. It really doesn't. That's probably why we're all in it 5 years in now, because we don't deal with that all the time, right? Like I thought the good does outweigh the bad in education. Like some of my students are my family.
Okay. I don't know. I think I would say like I hope that we're able to like broaden your minds and your ideas about educators because we're people just like you. Like after I leave the classroom, I'm not Miss Seed anymore. I am Stephanie, and I don't know. I just hope like it was just real, like for you to see like the real of this is education. This is educators that may look like you, may not look like you, may be around your age, may not be around your age, and we truly care about our community in the way that we do educate and things like that. So I really hope that was shown and displayed with what we said and like our insight based on our years of experience. So
I definitely will say, I mean, there's of course people like, do a GoFundMe page for teachers, But I would say I invest. I think education is investment. Investing, there's investment that goes around. Our students are literally, sounds super corny, but they legit are our future. And I absolutely love my students, even the one that get on your nerves. To the
ones you love.
That's my favorite. They're my favorite students.
Right, the ones who make you not want to have children but have fish. Right. Norman. But they're human beings who are so powerful, who are so fragile, who could be so strong and powerful. You build them up. And our students mean a lot. And you, again, as long as you build yourself up and you remember who you are, self-care, you go the route to learn more, to be better. For them, they need us, especially in the communities that we work in. Our students need us. And I'm so proud to be an educator and to have these women also investing in our system as well.
Man, well, thank y'all so much. Tonight was beautiful. We talked about education. Thank y'all so much for being here. Thank you for
having us.
Thank you so much for driving 8 hours just to be here with
us.
And if y'all want to follow them, they also have YouTube pages, hair, makeup. I tagged everybody. That was a lot. I tagged everybody on the promo video for today. We have literally 30 seconds. Y'all want to shout out real quick your Instagram handles and YouTube stuff? Like real quick.
All right, so mine is Stephanie, STEFA, and then knee like your knee, 21, and that's for across all social medias.
Mine is at vivacious_V92.
History Maker 27.
Ooh,
okay.
I took it there.
Okay. Vivacious 1913. Hey, y'all. All right, y'all. Have a good night. Appreciate y'all.
Bye.